you did. And I understand Mr. Clement will be starting off the questions here this afternoon.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of the development aid budget, how much goes to China and how much goes to India?
So directly, we have no bilateral programs with either China or India, so we don't do anything
but in terms of funding to NGOs that then in turn is spent in those countries, perhaps?
Yeah, I do have that. I just in one of these binders. So. Sorry.
No worries. Don't worry.
4 years.
You have 4 years? Okay. Sorry, I have it right here. Yeah.
I hope so.
So the answer to that is in the statistical report. So as Madame Bibeau in her remarks said that we have official development assistance, and so there's a portion of our assistance that is either will go through NGOs or some of the money that we get to multilateral organizations gets accounted for against countries. I have it here.
I can.
It's a good thing I have good binders.
Depending on how you take the definition of development, we do human rights with groups. We do human rights work in China. We do women empowerment. We do forced early marriage work in India with groups. So it depends how you define development.
Right.
Like from a human rights perspective, we are active in some of those countries.
That's good to know. But I was more interested in economic development, those kinds of things.
Sorry.
Economic development.
There's very little, like our overall official development assistance from Canada to China is about $1.35 million.
Right.
And for India, it's 4.97, and that's a lot of work through NGOs, for example, like World Vision or other NGOs like that that would do work there. There's certain health projects that are run by multilateral organizations such as the Global Fund to End AIDS, Tuberculosis, and Malaria that will spend a portion of what we give them as a country in those areas. And so that would be the development or official development assistance spending from Canada towards those two countries.
Right. Just in terms of, I guess we're into the world of sustainable development goals now, is that right? We're past the MDGs and we're on to the sustainable development goals. And just wondering, do you do an audit in terms of how that intersects with our bilateral, let's say, spending to make sure that you're trying to reduce overlap, is what I'm thinking, because obviously the Sustainable Development Goals is a multilateral project under the auspices of the United Nations, and then we've got our own bilateral. So is there an audit done to make sure that we don't duplicate?
Mr. Chair, perhaps I can answer that question. It goes back to, I think, the question that Mr. Bibeau fielded in the previous session in terms of funding for the Sustainable Development Goals. We haven't actually established priorities and actually identified specific activities in support of the Sustainable Development Goals. There are 17 goals altogether, as you know, 169 targets. We're not necessarily going to support every single goal. But at the end of the day, whatever we do will support the Sustainable Development Goals. You say it's under the UN auspices, but it's whatever we do, whether it's bilateral, multilateral, through NGOs, is in all likelihood going to support those goals, whether we end up supporting all 17 or 5 or 6, focusing on 5 or 6.
Kind of hard not to support those goals if you've got so many of them.
Pardon me?
It's kind of hard not to support those goals.
And again, we have to remember it's universal, so there's going to be a domestic side to this as well. But I guess I'm just trying to clarify that it's not sort of separate. I think anything that we do at the end of the day is going to be in support of sustainable development, and so that the review that's being conducted right now, if you look at the mandate letter that's been provided to Minister Bibeau, go away and conduct a review, consult Canadians, and as you do that, it's in support of Sustainable Development Goals. So the SDGs are like the international framework, and that Canada's development assistance, like everybody else's development assistance, will operate within that framework.
Right. I have a sort of a picayune question just in terms of, there's a lot of different, if we're looking at this table again on terms of assessed contributions to international organizations, there seems to be a lot, well not a lot, but several that have the word Commonwealth in them. There's the Commonwealth Secretariat, there's the Commonwealth Foundation, and Commonwealth Youth Program. So I'm just wondering, are those all run by the Commonwealth, or are they separate programs? How do they intersect with one another?
These are all separate programs. For example, the Commonwealth Youth Program supports youth development initiatives in Commonwealth countries, and it's designed to enhance Canada's relationship between those, between Canada and Commonwealth countries. The Commonwealth Foundation, for example, has a separate objective, and that's to contribute to civil society and governance within the members of the Commonwealth country. So each of those assessed contributions for Commonwealth have distinct purposes and objectives.
So would I be wrong if I aggregated all of the line items that have Commonwealth in their name? I'd get a better understanding of how much we contribute to the Commonwealth. Is that right?
I think that's an indication of what we would contribute through our contributions to Commonwealth organizations. Right. That's correct.
Are there any other programs that we do apart from these that are not listed?
These are all of the programs where we contribute directly to the Commonwealth.
Thank you.
Mr. Clement, and I'll go to Mr. Sidhu, please.
Thank you, Mr.